My name is Jemisin. I am talking to you right now from Brooklyn, New York, specifically Bed-Stuy. This is my studio or my office, which I'm just now sort of getting used to having as an author because I only recently have been able to afford a place that had an office. And I'm going to be talking to you about my book, The City We Became, which came out back in March by me. The City We Became is set in New York City in the modern day. Of course, I wrote it a couple of years ago, so things have changed since then. But it's set in New York City, a New York in which, for reasons we don't fully understand at the beginning of the series, the energy of the city has sort of coalesced, and the city itself has come to life. It has become a place that has the ability to act on its own, that can speak, that can think. So the energy of the city is now personified. It has chosen individuals who will represent the city. There's one overall that represents New York. And over the course of the book, we discover that there are individuals who also represent the boroughs. And so the story starts with a young man getting off the Amtrak at Penn Station and realizing to his own shock and horror that he's completely forgotten his name and identity. He then suddenly realizes the name Manhattan seems to fit him, and he's feeling compelled to go to FDR Drive to attend to a little bit of metaphysical mess that has developed. So the story proceeds from there. As the avatars of New York awaken, realize or start to realize what's happening, and then realize they've got to find the avatar of New York overall and awaken him from his slumber. There's never any real simple way to say this, but the spark that inspired the book was basically a combination of my love of like Japanese action shows, like Sentai shows, like Power Rangers and Voltron and stuff like that. And just my general sense that cities have personalities and energy and awareness. When I travel to a new city, and I've met lots of people who've had the same experience, when I travel to a new city, a lot of times within the first few, even minutes that I've been there, I feel an instant sort of, oh, okay, this city is right for me. I could live here. Or in some cases, I walk into a city and immediately it's like, oh, this is not my city. The city doesn't like me. It's time to go. And, I think a lot of people feel that too. In a lot of cases, when people choose to move to a new city, it's because they feel that instant sense of some kind of welcome or some kind of draw from that city. And if a city has a personality that people can pick up on, then, writer brain, of course, is going to turn that into something literal, or at least in my case, it does. The story, as I mentioned, comes from the Sentai framework, where people come together to fight evil. You've got 5 boroughs. You've got an incredibly powerful entity, which is the city of New York proper. You've got something threatening it. Naturally, when I'm writing about New York, one of the things that has always entranced me about New York is the fact that generally people come together and people try to look out for each other and people try to make sure that the city is well. And so I just literalized that and sort of parodied it a little bit. So the term American ingenuity has some weighting to me, and it's a little bit of a loaded term, just because I think of American ingenuity as a branch of American exceptionalism. Right now we're in the middle of a pandemic or a pandemic that is effectively raging unchecked, except in a few spots. I'm fortunately in one of them in New York. And that's partly because there are a lot of people with power in our country that believe that American ingenuity will somehow just make it go away. And that's not how anything works. The truth is that we're like any other culture. We borrow ideas from other cultures. We frequently use people who look good to the public consciousness and to the media to represent the face of actual ingenuity, which is often done by people who don't look like the inventors that our media seems to think that we want to see. So we have lots of stuff invented by women, by people of color, by disabled people, and so forth, and they aren't the face of the products that we are producing. So it's just a thing that I think we're going to have to reevaluate. American ingenuity, honestly, to me, is something of a misnomer in and of itself. But there's nothing wrong with us being creative. We are as creative as everyone else on the planet. I do not believe we are exceptional in that. What sort of possibilities or hope do I think my book can offer the country right now? Oh, well, that's a job that I don't think my book is built to do. The idea that authors deliberately write with some kind of goal, some kind of wider zeitgeist goal in mind is, I think it's something that a lot of people think that we do, but, at the end of the day, we're just trying to tell a good story, something that we enjoy. That said, I have been surprised to find some parallels between the city we became and the reality that we're in right now. And I think a lot of readers have been surprised to find it. And Lord knows I did not intend to write the symbolic version of a global pandemic into my little fantasy novel. This was just supposed to be sort of a lighthearted palate cleanser after the Broken Earth. But it's there. And I think the thing that people will probably, will hopefully begin to take from the book, if they want to take anything from it, is that when people work together, they are literally able to do just about anything. And that's the struggle that we're having right now as a country. Even New York is having that struggle. And I've been saying great things about New York up until this point, because New York in general has been handling the pandemic pretty well. I see lots of people masking in the protests that happened recently. Pretty much everybody that I saw was masking. They had hand sanitizer duct taped to a light pole for anybody that wanted to use it. So New York is pretty good about trying to look out for each other. But, we've seen some incidents recently of people in various neighborhoods just, wanting to party and filling up the street with large crowds of people. And, that's some of that is just human nature. There's a part of us that just does not want to do what is sensible or mature. And, these were young people. They just wanted to party. It's summertime. It's hot. I kind of don't blame them, except that they should be a little more thoughtful. But what my hope is that basically people will realize that New York's strength, the reason that we are starting to see, or we have seen a massive downturn in deaths and infections due to COVID, is because New Yorkers are trying to look out for each other. And most of us are wearing masks and most of us are being careful. And I hope the rest of the country and the rest of the world, well, the rest of the world seems to have figured it out. But I hope that the rest of the country does eventually develop the same idea. What role have libraries played in my life? I grew up in a library, I guess if that's a good way to frame it. My mom used to love to go shopping at the mall, and I hated going to the mall. Until I turned into a teenager, and then, of course, like every other 80s teenager, the mall became the place to hang out. But when I was younger, the mall was the place where I stood around groaning and sighing while my mother tried on clothes. So eventually she learned to just sort of drop me off at the local library and leave me there for hours. I'm not sure it's legal these days, but at the time, I was a latchkey kid already. It was not really a huge deal. And I literally read my way through the entire library. This was in Mobile, Alabama, really small. The little neighborhood library that I had been going to was not that big either. The librarians knew me. They saw me coming. They would sometimes put aside books for me that they thought that I would like. They always knew to keep the science fiction lists, like what are the recommended books for science fiction readers. They always had those lists handy for me because I was always bugging them. And I read my way from the children's stacks straight into the science fiction stacks. And that's pretty much why I'm a science fiction writer. They were positioned right next to each other. So that was it. The message that I would leave for my readers and anybody that wants to be an author like me, is read a lot. Hope you enjoy my book. If you don't, that's fine. Read lots of other books that you do enjoy. Reading is effectively practice to become a writer. And write. You want to write? Write.